Okay, so let's dive right into this story that really highlights the increasingly sophisticated world of cybercrime. It's kind of a scary one. Picture this, right? You're a textile tycoon in India, the top of your game, and suddenly you're hit with accusations of financial fraud. You're basically staring down the barrel of like a legal nightmare.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened to this guy, SP Oswal.
Right.
Ended up getting scammed out of $833,000.
Yeah, and what's really, I think, striking about this case is not just the amount, but the method that was used. So this wasn't your, like, run-of-the-mill phishing scam. This was what you call a digital arrest. And essentially what the scammers did was they used technology to basically hold Oswal captive in his own home.
Wait, digital arrest? What does that even mean? That sounds way more intense than just, getting a shady email.
So imagine you're on a video call and you are convinced that you are under constant surveillance by the authorities.
Right.
They're showing you what you believe to be a warrant for your arrest. You see official documents, maybe even a deepfake of the Chief Justice. And all of this is designed to just overwhelm you with fear and pressure. It really breaks down your ability to think rationally.
Wow. And because it's a live video call, right? You're looking someone in the eye. It feels real. It feels immediate. You're not just reading an email. You've got someone who's threatening you with legal action, financial ruin, the whole 9 yards.
That's exactly right. It really preys on our instinctive trust in what we see and hear, and I think especially from authority figures. And one of the things that makes digital arrest even more sinister is that it leverages technology to kind of exploit this trust. And deepfakes in particular, I think, play a key role in making these scams just incredibly effective.
So in Oswald's case, they used this digital arrest tactic to basically scare him into paying up.
Yeah, precisely. It all started with an anonymous phone call accusing Oswal of financial irregularities. And this was linked to a very public case at the time involving Naresh Goyal, the former head of Jet Airways. And now, the article doesn't explicitly state whether a deepfake was used in this instance. But, using these fake video calls to impersonate CBI officers is a very common tactic in India. And, that little detail about the Goyal case, I think that's super important because it shows that there's this level of research and premeditation involved, right? These scammers, they didn't just pick a random target.
Right.
They chose someone with a public profile whose fear they could very easily manipulate.
So it's like they did their homework. They're like, okay, we're going to research you. We're going to figure out what makes you tick, what your weaknesses are. And then we're going to exploit it with technology and lies.
Exactly.
Okay, but how did they convince him that he was actually facing arrest? Did they just Photoshop some documents? What did they actually do?
Well, it's actually even more unsettling, I'd say, because they didn't just use any documents. What they showed him looked like official arrest warrants.
Oh, wow.
And Supreme Court paperwork, all pointing to this, fabricated debt that he supposedly owed. And remember, they're keeping him on these video calls
right.
for extended periods of time.
Wearing him down.
Exactly, just making him desperate to do anything to avoid, going to jail.
And it worked, sadly. I mean, the article said that he transferred the money because he truly believed that he was in trouble.
Yeah, it's a terrifying example, I think, of just how powerful these tactics are.
Right.
Especially when they tap into our deepest fears and anxieties. And what's more alarming, I think, is this isn't just happening to individuals. This is happening to big corporations as well.
Really? So this isn't just about scamming people. They're going after big companies too.
Absolutely. And I think this is where you see how these scams are evolving, and it's important to understand. So remember, we talked about those phishing emails. Digital arrest is like phishing, but on steroids. Right. And with deepfakes becoming easier to create, even corporations with those, really robust security measures, they're finding themselves increasingly vulnerable.
So we're talking about a massive jump in scale and sophistication.
Exactly.
What are some other examples of how this digital arrest tactic is being used? I mean, beyond the Oswald case.
Well, one that really, I think, underscores the global reach of this is there was a UK energy firm CEO who was tricked into transferring $243,000 using deepfake audio.
Wait, they faked his voice. How is that even possible?
See, that's the thing about deepfakes. The technology has advanced so rapidly that it's now possible to replicate someone's voice with frightening accuracy using just a few seconds of audio.
So you're telling me that all it takes is a short clip of someone speaking online, and that's it? Someone can create a deep fake audio recording that's almost impossible to distinguish from the real thing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's terrifying. What happened with the CEO? How did they...
So they cloned his voice, and they called his financial team, instructing them to make an urgent transfer to an offshore account. And the team, because they were familiar with his voice, his speaking style, they didn't suspect a thing. They made the transfer and only later realized that they'd been completely duped.
That is wild. It's like something out of a movie, except it's happening in the real world with very real consequences. So how do we protect ourselves if we can't even trust our own ears anymore?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I don't know if there is an easy answer, but understanding how these scams work, I think, is the first step toward, building a defense. Knowledge is power, right? Even in the face of increasingly sophisticated cybercrime.
Absolutely. And the more we know about these tactics, the better equipped we'll be to spot those red flags and protect ourselves and our businesses. Speaking of which, let's unpack exactly how these deepfakes are made. Is this something that requires a team of Hollywood special effects artists, or can anyone with a laptop and an internet connection pull this off?
You might be surprised to learn that creating a convincing deepfake is far easier than you might think.
Yeah, a lot of people think you need, a fancy studio, a whole team of tech wizards to create deepfakes. But the reality is there are tools online now that can generate a fairly convincing deepfake with just a few seconds of audio or video footage.
Seriously, just a few seconds. So like that grainy YouTube video of me attempting karaoke could be enough to create a deepfake.
You laugh, but it's true. That just shows how accessible this technology has become. All it takes is a short clip of someone speaking, you click a few buttons on the right software, and boom, you can put words in their mouth, change their expressions, even manipulate their voice. Okay, now that is both fascinating and terrifying. It's like anyone with a computer could become like a digital puppeteer.
Yeah.
But let's back up for a second. You mentioned that these tools use something called JANs. What are JANs exactly, and what role do they play in all of this?
Right, so JAN stands for Generative Adversarial Network. Think of it as a digital duel between two AI algorithms. One, AI, the generator, creates the deepfake by analyzing and mimicking the source material, and then the other one, the discriminator, tries to spot the fake. And as they battle it out, both AIs become more and more sophisticated, which leads to more realistic and harder to detect deepfakes.
So it's like an AI arms race with each side constantly trying to outsmart the other. No wonder deepfakes are getting so good so quickly. But let's get back to the victims here. The Oswal case and that UK CEO scam are scary enough, but the article also mentions something about a deepfake video call involving a former Ukrainian foreign minister. That sounds like it has the potential to go way beyond financial scams.
It absolutely does. In that incident, someone impersonated former Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba in a video call with a U.S. senator. And while the exact details and intentions behind that deepfake are still being investigated, it really highlights the potential for this technology to be weaponized for political manipulation, to sow discord, even to influence international relations.
That's unsettling. If we can't even trust that a video call with a foreign official is authentic, what does that mean for diplomacy, for global security? It feels like this technology has the power to completely undermine trust on a global scale.
It's a chilling thought, and it underscores the urgency of addressing this issue. And this is where we need to talk about India specifically, because according to the article, digital arrest scams seem to be particularly prevalent there.
That's right. The article mentioned a few factors that make India a prime target for these kinds of scams. What were those again?
So Professor Subramanian, who was quoted in the article, points to a lack of awareness about deepfakes among the general population in India. Many people are simply unaware of how advanced this technology has become and how easily they can be manipulated by it.
That makes sense. If people don't even know what deepfakes are, they're not going to be looking for signs of them. They're more likely to take a video call at face value, especially if it appears to be from someone in a position of authority.
Exactly, and this lack of awareness is compounded by India's heavy reliance on mobile phones for communication. People are accustomed to conducting important business and personal matters through their phones, which makes them more vulnerable to these types of scams. Think about it. How often do you answer a video call without a second thought, especially if it's from a number you don't recognize?
All the time. Especially if I'm expecting a call. I'm more likely to answer without really thinking about it. And with so much of our lives playing out on our phones these days, from banking to work to social connections, the potential damage is huge.
Exactly. Now add to that the fact that India's telecommunications sector hasn't quite caught up with the rapid evolution of these cyber threats. There's a concerning lack of focus on cybersecurity, which creates vulnerabilities that scammers are all too eager to exploit.
So it's like a perfect storm, brewing low awareness, high mobile usage, and a telecommunications infrastructure that's struggling to keep pace with these sophisticated attacks. What can be done to combat this threat, both in India and globally? Because this isn't just an India problem, is it?
Absolutely not. This is a global issue that requires a multi-pronged approach. It really does require a multi-pronged approach.
Fair.
I think it has to be a combination of technology, education, and then global cooperation.
So how do we fight back against this digital crime wave? Is it even possible to stay ahead of these scammers when the technology is evolving so rapidly?
Yeah, that is the challenge, right? It's like this constant game of cat and mouse, but I don't think it's a hopeless battle.
Okay.
One promising development is the emergence of these deepfake detection systems.
Okay.
So researchers are actually developing some really sophisticated software
Okay.
that can analyze audio and video for these very subtle inconsistencies, these little artifacts, and they actually reveal the deepfake's true nature.
Artifacts. You're talking about things that our human eyes and ears might miss, but computers can pick up on. What kind of things are we talking about?
Yeah. So imagine, right, a deepfake video, the lighting seems a little bit off.
Right.
Or maybe the person's blinking pattern just isn't natural. Or maybe the audio isn't quite synced with the movement of their lips.
Oh, okay.
So these are all examples of those artifacts that can actually give away a deepfake. And these detection systems are trained to spot these subtle cues, and they're analyzing thousands, sometimes millions of deepfakes, and they learn to recognize the patterns that kind of betray their artificial origins.
Wow. So it's like having this digital magnifying glass that could just uncover the hidden flaws in these fakes.
Exactly.
But technology alone can't solve this, right? Even if we have these amazing detection systems, they're not going to help if people don't know what to look for in the first place.
You're absolutely right. It goes back to that multi-pronged approach, right? We've got to raise awareness about deepfakes. We have to teach people how to identify those red flags, encourage people to just be a little bit more skeptical, especially when it comes to digital content.
Right. So it's not just about building a better mousetrap. It's about teaching people how to spot the digital rodents, I guess.
Exactly. We need people to become more discerning consumers of information in this digital world that we live in.
That makes a lot of sense. We need to develop our digital street smarts, so to speak. But what about the global aspect you mentioned? How do we stop these scammers when they can operate from anywhere in the world?
And that's where that international cooperation becomes really crucial. We need to strengthen those collaborations between law enforcement agencies, share intelligence on these evolving threats, and really just create this united front against these cybercriminals. Professor Subramanian, who we've mentioned, suggests utilizing existing agreements, things like Interpol warrants, to pursue scammers that operate across borders. He also, I think, really stresses the importance of better training and resources for these organizations that are tasked with, enforcing international law, especially in this digital age.
So it's about creating a digital dragnet that's as sophisticated and interconnected as the criminals that it's trying to catch?
Exactly. It's a daunting task, but I think the stakes are just too high to ignore. The more we know about these cyber threats, the better equipped we'll be to protect ourselves in this, crazy digital world we live in.
Absolutely. Well, this deep dive has been a real eye-opener, to say the least. We've gone from a textile tycoon's terrifying ordeal to the potential unraveling of truth itself, all thanks to the rise of deepfakes and the criminals who use them.
It's a stark reminder that we live in a world now where seeing is no longer believing. And, those lines between reality and fabrication, they're getting blurrier every day. It's up to all of us to navigate this complex landscape with, a little bit of skepticism and a commitment to just staying informed.
Well said. And as we venture further into this brave new world of AI, critical thinking and vigilance will be our greatest allies. So the next time you get a video call, think twice before you answer. And remember, if something seems too good to be true, it probably is.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.